All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are gearing up for a massive week this week with U.S. and China deals potentially kicking off in a big way, looking for some easing along the tariff situation, which could have very broad impacts. And I think we can see in the pre-market, we're going to go through some of the technicals and talk about where exactly we could go with this and some stocks that you should be watching and some stocks that I have been watching. So I want to get right into the charts with you. By the way, if you want to see the technical analyses, more commentary, if you want to see buys and sells, you guys want to see how I'm playing the ups and the downs of this market over at the Discord, links in the description. There's 1,000 members over there. There's a panel of us that are working together to bring progress towards financial freedom and alpha to your portfolios. I'll tell you about that later. In the meantime, let's get over into the charts. So here we go. Last week, I said, be careful right here. This is the 200-day, and then U.S. talks to China. We are up over the $500 mark in the pre-market hours. So 508.35, and actually look where that puts us. That puts us around some pretty significant resistance that happens to be right down along these peaks that used to be some buying pressure that propped us up. Now it's going to be something that we probably will butt right up against, so it's not too surprising that we happen to be sitting there. Now, mind you, with hindsight, it's not too surprising. Yeah, it sits there. I don't know that I would have guessed that it would move that far. I would probably would have guessed a little bit more subdued, probably around that 498 number. But this is absolutely massive. And there's reasons why it's absolutely massive the way that it is. I talked about the 4 pillars that prop up markets, that it takes to push markets up, to keep them going up. One is that we have subdued inflation, and if the tariff situation is cooling down, then we don't have to worry about such inflationary pressures, which means that the subdued inflation that we have seen will continue to be seen, or can more easily be continued to be seen, which means that pillar becomes a little bit shinier. Also, with trade deals comes better economic results in terms of GDP, and strong GDP is another one of those 4 pillars that we would be watching for, which can also, with the subdued inflation, with the strong labor market, we could potentially see with all that stuff really falling into place, easier monetary policy coming in, and that also with the high GDP, with that further demand that keeps up the workforce, and that strong labor market is the 4th pillar, the 3rd one being that easy monetary policy, just in case that wasn't clear. So the market does sniff this out, by the way. I've talked about it for months, and you can see that the market absolutely loves this information. Now, mind you, we might pull back to open things up, and if we do, I hope it happens to be around that 500 number. And if so, I think that sets up that next launching point from where we're at in the pre-market hours right now. Who knows? We're going to have to watch and see on an intraday basis what that exactly looks like. But I think today is going to be interesting and incredible, and I think this sets us up for a good run. We can potentially, this news is big enough. Let me take that down. There we go. We could potentially see that next run that takes us back to this previous all-time high that we had in QQQ, which happens to be right at $540 per share. If we go over to SPY, where does that put us? If we go up to new all-time highs on that one, or at least retesting the previous one, 611.39 is that number. I think 609.83, I think, was that number that we had to sit on top of before, and we never got to it. So if we can break through this resistance, through this chop that's to the upside, we could actually see some pretty significant progress. Now, mind you, I said last week that this could likely be a release of downward pressure. We don't necessarily know that it turns into upward pressure for the markets. If it does turn into upward pressure for the markets, that's what takes us to the new all-time highs. By the way, the biggest punished out of the 3 indices that we have, it would be the Russell 2000. NASDAQ 100 is the Qs. SPY is the ETF that tracks the S&P 500. And now IWM is the ETF that tracks the Russell 2000 stocks, with the biggest pre-market performance putting us up to 210 so far. Big old move, by the way, at 215 and change, 215.50 as of Friday's close is where we find that 200-day. We could potentially get that cross going. Let me zoom in on this for you. There we go. Between the 50 and the 20, which would be a bullish sign. If we get that crossover, that could be absolutely huge. We do want to watch for resistance at that 200-day. Getting on top of that is absolutely bullish. I said last week we had a lot of reasons to be hopeful, and this is some of that hope coming through. I think it will lead to some decent euphoria, so we could have a next good couple of days coming up for us that really what we see for the inflation reports coming out for us might not be as meaningful in the face of positive tariff news, because we could just attribute it to the inflation and then just be like, well, this will go away for us. And even if that's true or not true, it's at least a narrative that works, that takes us into the summertime, and then we'll have to reassess. So moving over into here for NVIDIA. Been talking about this, said we have to overtake 118.09, and in the pre-market hours, We are at 122 and change. 125 is some pretty big resistance. So if I take down the technicals that are on here just so you can see a little bit more plainly, this is the 200-day right at around 125. It also coincides with some Fibonacci extension levels. But if this thing really plays out and we get that run up to earnings, and we can absolutely get that run up to earnings, we have 133.74 all the way up to 144, well, 143.96 to look forward to. If we get that, this could be the start of that big run. Over to Dollar Tree. There we go. Earnings, by the way, for NVIDIA, I believe, are the 28th. So I'm going to be watchful for that. Dollar Tree, I know, maybe not as exciting, but I said that we have a gap to fill up to 94, and the pre-market hours are currently at 89. So we want to watch for that gap up to here, and we actually have a fairly good ascending triangle pattern here to watch as well for Dollar Tree. A lot of things popping off. I think a big one for you to pay attention to here is Tesla. That Tesla is actually, because of the bull flag formation, let me take this down so you can actually see it a little bit better. We actually started breaking out of it last week on Thursday into Friday, and now we're up to 322. You're like, well, I missed it. Well, look at the increased volume that we have. We have that pop, and if I put the technicals back up, we actually have, being up above this major historic resistance where we were we actually closed above it on Friday. We actually have room up to 343. That could be a pretty big news for us. So we have 144 for NVIDIA. We have a 343 for Tesla. And for Dollar Tree, what we're looking for there is about $94 per share. And just to talk about Bitcoin really fast to see what kind of movement we have there, we are absolutely making that next move up. We made that full leg up to that 104 number. There's a lot of noise here. Let me take it down for you. Made that full move up to 104. And guys, we are darn near that all-time high price where you can see all these candles. Look at these. You can see all these high wicks on these candles just popping up right above this green line where Bitcoin currently sits. There's a lot of selling pressure. We need to close up above 109. Just call it 110,000. We get a candle on top of 110,000. I think it's 109,356 is the number that I said. But getting a full candle sitting on top of that is going to give us that next launching point for, well, probably at least another 10%. We'll see if we get it. It depends on what the momentum looks like that we have for this and what sort of excitement we have. SUY, just to give an update on that, I said that we'd stop around $4. We did. And now we're making that move, that price target up around $5, $4.96. We definitely want to keep on watching that. XRP is barcoding right now. Over these past 3 days, we're getting that next barcode look. The next move for this, if we can clear 250, that move takes us up all the way to 287. We'll be watchful for that. If we can sit on top of $3, then we can have another shot at that 340 number that we took on before. There's a lot of resistance at 355 plus for XRP. Ethereum, by the way, making big news. When I was tracking SUY, didn't really talk too much about Ethereum. We do have its 200-day just north of where it's at right now, right at $2,700. If we can sit on top of that, we have that next move that can take us up to the 3,000 plus number for Ethereum. So I said before that there are a lot of reasons to be cautiously bullish, at least to be hopeful for what we have happening right now. Now, from a technical standpoint, from those moving averages, from the momentum that we have, from the news that we have, there's probably still going to be volatility, but this still could be generally up still for the next couple of days, depending on what sort of news comes out, depending on what sort of announcements we have. But the market's probably going to see this as a positive thing. And then if we do have a pretty astronomical week that the direction is pretty much decidedly up, well, then we could have a little bit of selling going into Friday. But we'll see. I mean, really, it's anybody's call. We'll see how the market takes today. We'll see how it shapes up with some high volume conviction, and we'll replan from there. I will tell you at the end of the day when I come back with my video what I'm seeing. If you guys want to see firm throughout the day, from throughout the trading day, come on over to the Discord. The link's in the description. Sign up for their earner tier so you get unrestricted access to everything that Discord has to offer. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. We'll see you next video.